high-altitude world of great and fragile mountains, where people live on the edge of change, in awe and fear of a landscape that could come crashing down. For centuries, cultures have lived and worshipped with the tremors beneath their feet.
I can see a white area.
Tremors that tear apart the Himalayas, while rivers wash the debris away, across a plate through the densest population in the world, into an ocean and out of the mouths of volcanoes. While cities grow and scientists try to predict the timing of the next big event. In the collision zone.
I've always wanted to see the Himalayas. I've always wanted to see the geology. I've lectured about it. I've written textbooks that include sections on Himalayan geology. But by coming here to the Himalayas, sometimes you just have to say, wow.
Canadian geologist Nick Eyles is getting in a little R&R in the middle of his tectonic tour of the planet. As he cruises along outside of Kathmandu in Nepal, he's considering what he's going to see up there in the mountains where the Earth works as a machine. A machine kick-started by a continental collision after the last supercontinent broke apart.
It's one of the greatest stories in Earth history. 55 million years ago is an important marker in Earth history because that marks the end of the Tethys Ocean. India, beginning its long migration northwards, collides with Asia, finally, and that's the extinction of an ocean. And those oceanic sediments, with all their included fossils, became caught in a huge vise. And they've been uplifted 2 millimeters a year over 55 million years, and they're now 8 kilometers above sea level.
It's hard to imagine that something as formidable as the Himalayan mountain range could be so delicate. They are coming down as fast as they went up.
They're impermanent features of the planet. So for all the size of the Himalayas, the biggest features on the planet, they are still ephemeral. They're being torn down by gravity, and enormous fluxes of sediment being driven out into the oceans.
Nick is going to investigate that and what eroding mountains mean to the people who live among them. Then he's going to follow the sediment stream as it gets flushed out of the mountains and down through India, out to the Indian Ocean and down to Indonesia, where it gets recycled into new land by volcanoes. New land that will turn into the world's next supercontinent. Nick is joining a donkey train in the Nepali territory of Mustang, where the evidence of the collision is everywhere.
It's a wonderful thing to see.
So we're going to see lots of fossils that were flourishing in this long dead ocean.
Nick's companion is Professor B.P. Upreti. Professor Upreti knows how to see this land as a place in constant transition. What are now mountains was once ocean floor.
So to build these high mountains, we've had to destroy an ocean, and rocks that were once below sea level are now up to 8,000 meters above sea level.
Yeah, that's true that, all these sediments that were deposited in the ocean bottom, they have been uplifted, they're squeezed up, and then, they have come up to this height.
The route to the heart of Mustang is the Kali Gandaki Gorge. 1,000 years, traders and nomads have traveled through here, past the twisted rock faces, gnarled by tectonics. It's a land of serene beauty, but it's also prone to earthquakes and landslides. At one time, these were flat-lying sediments sitting quietly underwater. Now look at them.
It's a great example of crustal shortening, isn't it? Where you take marine rocks and you fold them and you create this high topography.
Yeah, it's the same way. You know, these rocks were deposited in the bottom of the ocean when they were laid horizontally, and then when they collided with the rocks of the Asia, then they started buckling up, and then, you know, they folded, and then now you have these mountains formed.
From here you can see the trails of the glaciers carving out the Himalayas. Down closer, you can see how glaciers work as massive earth movers. That is a Khumbu icefall down there. As the glaciers have receded, they have carried boulders and gravels and dumped them here, onto a field of ice that works as a giant conveyor belt. That is a glacial lake, dammed up by ice, ready to burst, a flood of water and sediment that will rush downstream. It's an entire system of erosion, a machine that continually works towards change. Up here, impermanence is everywhere.
This is a huge landscape, isn't it? You've been working up here more than 30 years, so why don't you take me through what we're seeing?
The place is called Kagbeni down there in that village. You can see that this is a boundary-like area between the upper Mustang and the lower, Mustang area. And here, interestingly, you have the old sediments of the ocean. The oceanic sediments, which are now converted into rocks. These rivers were flowing south from Tibet side even before the rise of the Himalaya. So these rivers, this river has cut through the Himalaya as the Himalaya was rising. So in a way, the rivers are older than the Himalayan region. And these rivers have been carrying sediments from all these areas throughout its history and bringing them to the Ganges River and then finally to the Bay of Bengal. These valleys were all filled with these sediments, and now very little is remained. That means, the power of these rivers carrying down these sediments, and one day all these sediments will be all gone from here.
So despite their thickness, they're very transitory, aren't they? They won't be there very long.
Yes, definitely. In due course of time, everything, that you see these deposits will be all gone, and only the bedrocks will be left there.
Throughout the Himalayas, one of the most impressive things you see are huge landslides and debris flows tearing down the mountains. And as soon as the uplift stops, as soon as India and Asia become locked, then gravity will win. We know that in about 200 million years' time, the Himalayas will be beveled to a low relief surface.
People have lived and farmed in Mustang for more than 1,000 years. The sediments make for fertile fields, and the landscape forms the very core of their beliefs. These are people of the Bodh tradition. Bodh monks meditate in caves carved into the walls of the Kali Gandaki. They crawl into the embrace of the rock itself. This village's name, Lubrak, means crag of the snakeskin. It's named after this relief on the canyon wall. People here believe that there are nasty snake spirits in the rock that will cause trouble unless they pray to them daily. Lubrak rests on a shoulder of a stream that feeds the Gandaki, but it is in the shadow of a massive boulder that will demolish the town if or when it's dislodged.
Yeah, unfortunately, the village is not in a very good place in the sense that when you have very large earthquakes, a lot of these buildings will collapse, and also a lot of these boulders will come down and, damage the building and kill people.
I can see very large blocks up there.
Yeah.
Scattered around. I can see a wide area. It's obviously been a very recent landslide. So the next major earthquake for this area will presumably send all this coming down the slope.
You may ask why these people are living in these areas. Whenever you have these kind of landslides, you have more flatter areas formed, and more gentle slopes are formed, and naturally that is a good place for farming, agriculture. So therefore, many of these areas where you have these villages, they settled somewhere in the landslide area.
These landslides only occur once every few hundred years, so there's major opportunities there for communities to occupy those areas safely until the next landslide, but it's a dangerous landscape.
So it's really no wonder that the monks of Lubrak pray for the serenity of the landscape. Everyone here is conversant on the tectonic history of the Kali Gandaki. They speak of an earthquake in 1505 as if it happened recently. Of course, in geologic terms, it did. Religions have always attempted to explain why the Earth does what it does, and geologists have always tried to apply their science to the landscape to do the same thing. It's a question of perspective.
145, 150 million years or a little older.
The study of geology isn't really very old, but the cultures of the Himalayas are. So for centuries, whenever they found the fossil of a Jurassic-era seashell, they had no choice but to regard it with a degree of mysticism.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can excavate one of the kings
look at this
of the
beautiful
Jurassic.
ammonite. Yeah. The age of these rocks are Upper Jurassic, 150 million years to 145 million years or a little older. And during this time, the sea was ruled by these ammonites. The continents, particularly the northern... Yeah, it's beautiful. It's perfect. Yeah, it came out. It's wonderful. And yeah.
So these are the kings of the Jurassic Ocean, which are now more than 3,000 meters above sea level.
Yeah, that's very interesting, when these ammonites were living in the ocean. Now they are at the top of the mountain. This is the proof that this part of the mountain was under sea at some time, about 150 million years before here.
They dominated those oceans, didn't they? In a way that the dinosaurs dominated life.
Yes, exactly. This is very interesting. Yeah.
So is there a local name for these?
Saligram is the name that we give. Saligram is the ammonite is the scientific name.
Nick and Professor Upreti are joined by anthropologist Carol Dunham, who's been studying the cultures of these valleys for 30 years. She's going to lead them to a sacred site over the next ridge. One of the most important Mustang traditions is to make sure visitors leave happy, and that prayers are said to keep the earth's rumblings at bay. The mules trudge up steep cliffs of compressed sediments. This is a land of trails connecting valleys and cultures. Suspension bridges have helped shorten some routes, but it's still best when traveling in Mustang to give yourself time. Pilgrims have passed by this shrine of stones, this stupa, for centuries. Each little rock left behind is like a coin thrown into a wishing well.
Really feel the elevation right now.
Yeah, each breath is precious. Huh?
At this time of year, the temple at Muktanath becomes a pilgrimage site for Hindus from Kathmandu and southern Nepal.
Diagrams.
Yeah.
We've seen these in every community we've visited. Now, how does a fossil become revered?
You know, these ammonites are found here in these areas. Traditionally, these ammonites are worshipped by the Hindus, and
They represent life itself, the very life itself.
So would they carry these as good luck symbols with them?
it's a symbol of God, actually. So they actually worship it every day at home. And I have these salagrams at my home, brought by my ancestors for many generations.
Some of these Hindus have walked for 2 weeks to get here, up the side of a mountain near the foot of a landslide where a crystal clear spring emerges. For these worshippers, there is a sacredness to this place, tied to the drama of the landscape and the presence of the water.
The 108 spouts symbolize all of the water actually on this planet. So today they're purifying and they're bathing as a symbol also of representing the whole world itself. Today is actually, they're worshiping the goddess Durga for the Hindus here. But before they do that, they have to bathe. They have to purify themselves so they can see clearly. And that's really where the importance of water is, which is essential to purify the mind and the body. They believe you have to do that with water.
As a geologist, I've noticed that this area is a giant landslide and the spring is emerging at the back of the landslide. Do they know that landslide could happen again in the future?
I think that there is a great awareness that they live in a very volatile place, and they see that in a sacred sense. Their worldview is one that they need to propitiate the earth spirits that they coexist with. So their response is a religious or ritual one to that, and they believe that these landslides are caused when there is disharmony and when they're unhappy, the earth spirits. What I really love is that the stories where you will look at it and as a geologist will tell one story in the striations, in the folds and the crumples of the mountains. For them, they will see a very dramatic interplay of spirits at play that is frozen there, demons and spirits that live within the rock itself.
So I come up here as a geologist and I would map this area to try and understand how the Himalayas were built, but I'm sort of missing the big picture, aren't I?
Well, I think that while you look at that incredible rich story, there is a very profound story that's invisible that they see as well within there. And when that is lost, we lose a very profound link to the earth itself.
Over the years, pilgrims have carved prayers into rock. These are mani stones, and they ask the land for peaceful passage along these mountain paths. But there are no guarantees. This path cuts through the Muktanath landslide.
We've talked about these as hazards. We've got the community down there, but basically this is how mountains are pulled down, aren't they?
Yeah, you know, this is the mountain's fate. They rise and then finally they are brought down, and one day they become flat and almost, there's no mountain left. And this is the process that happens, erosion goes on. And this is how the mountains have to come down and finally become the plains.
Flattening the Himalayas means an immense amount of material will be carried down through the Kaligandaki Gorge. The problem is that the glaciers in the Himalayas are melting faster these days, expelling more sediments and dumping a gigantic load into the river systems to the south.
Amazing amount of sediment in this river, isn't it?
One of the heaviest silt loads of any river system in the world, not the heaviest.
That's because of the Himalayan mountains, the size of them, and the fact there are glaciers eroding down into their slopes.
And they're so young and moving. They let off a tremendous amount of soil.
Claudia Sadoff is a hydroeconomist with the World Bank. She's studying how the countries that feed off the Himalayan runoff can deal with all the muck that's now carried by the rivers.
But it must cause amazing problems in all the barrages and dams downstream.
Absolutely. Any infrastructure built on the river, hydropower for irrigation, is clogged up with all this sediment level. And in order to control for the amazing flooding and movement of this river, large embankments are built throughout the system as well. And the sediment builds up between the barriers of the embankment. Good glacier water.
So that must reduce the lifetime of these dams if you've got huge amounts of sediment coming in.
Quite significantly, not only the dams themselves, which begin to have their reservoirs fill very quickly, but even the hydropower turbines are eaten up by all of the soil that goes through the turbines because there's so much soil and silt in these waters.
Now, as a geologist, I see this river carrying enormous volumes of sediment down to the ocean. It's a natural system, but you need to manage that system, don't you? What are the main challenges that arise from all this sediment that's going down the river?
Well, the sediment is so heavy that it affects all of the infrastructure that are built on the river. The river moves and it meanders. As the river washes the sediment down, the sediment builds up and it creates little eddies and it turns the river, and the river flows and is braided throughout its system, so it becomes a very unpredictable river that can be extremely destructive at times of flood.
Eight tributaries flow through the Kathmandu Valley, fed by waters from the Himalayas. This temple on the banks of the Bagmati River is the place where Hindus cremate their dead and commit the ashes to the sacred waters, which eventually join the Ganges in India. There are over 3 million people around Kathmandu. 30 years ago, there were only a few 100,000. There are few checks against growth here, even less oversight for how buildings are built and where. At times it feels like Kathmandu is a city out of control, and that's what gives it much of its charm. But it's also a disaster waiting to happen. Kathmandu is built on an old lake bed made of sediments that poured in here from the mountains, and the lake bed is on an earthquake zone. These school children take their earthquake drills seriously, right down to the fake injuries and the gory makeup. But when a major earthquake does hit here, covering their heads and running out the front door of the school might not be enough for these kids to survive.
As the city's grown very rapidly and poorly planned, it must be said, we've now got buildings on top of very steep, very unstable slopes. So the school we just visited is right on the top there, and part of the school has collapsed down slope. So if there's a major earthquake, you can imagine the results there'll be to the building.
One of the other caps Professor B.P. Upreti wears is that of an earthquake preparedness expert.
Nepal is overdue for another large earthquake, isn't it? This wouldn't be the place to be, would it?
In fact, this core part of the city, Kathmandu Valley's core part, particularly the Kathmandu city's core part, is this area. And this is going to be really a very difficult place. When you have big earthquakes, a lot of houses will collapse here. And there is a study that within 1 square kilometer of the area, there will be over 2,000 deaths, in this area. These streets are very narrow and people have very little chance to escape out, Kathmandu is a very old city. They had many such earthquakes, so they also have developed some indigenous technology for earthquake-resistant features to put in the buildings, and particularly the temples. For example, they have very good foundation, very wide foundation, even if the temples are tall, but their foundation is very wide. It's a pyramidal structure in a way. So therefore, many of these temples have survived in the last earthquake of 1934 of 8.3 Richter scale.
So I presume modern-day Kathmandu, which is growing so quickly with urban sprawl, the buildings are put up cheaply, aren't they?
That's exactly the scary thing that is happening today in Nepal, in Kathmandu, is that, the buildings are coming up so quickly and the structures are not safe. And if you are not going to make good structures, they are more vulnerable and more dangerous than the traditional buildings. Normally we say it's not the question whether there will be an earthquake in Kathmandu or not, it is when.
So we know by looking at the geology of the continents, going back 4 billion years, even more, that Himalayan-type mountains are ephemeral. So you're converting massive, impressive mountains into sediment.
These rivers feed into the Ganges. If we remember the analogy that the earth here works like a machine, then the Ganges is the transport link that delivers raw materials to the factory. But the Ganges is also the source of life for 1/6 of the planet's population. As the Himalayan sediments flow through, some are left behind to make incredibly fertile farmland. But now there are more people relying on the Ganges and what it provides than ever before. The strain on the system has become enormous. Here are some facts about the Ganges River. It's over 2,500 kilometers long, snaking from the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal. Along its route, the Ganges sustains over 1 billion people. In Calcutta alone, near the river's mouth, there are over 5 million people, and for each of them, the river is the center of life.
The sheer volume of people that are using this water is just amazes anyone who tries to understand the different river systems of the world.
Dr. Saugata Datta teaches at Kansas State University in America now, but he grew up here in Calcutta, studying both the water and everything that gets poured into the Ganges: industrial waste, garbage, sewage, even the ashes from Hindu funerals. At the same time, babies are baptized in the river and people perform their ablutions, even though the river water itself is far from hygienic. The water causes skin rashes, infections, and intestinal problems.
Getting the river water uncontaminated is out of question right now, as it stands.
But I suppose the central problem is it's a holy river for many people, so how do you slowly wean them off that
people still have this belief that the river water, the Ganges river water, is actually coming from the Himalayas, and it is untainted throughout its journey or course until it gets into the delta.
How do you tell 1 billion people that something they believe is so sacred is filled with impurities? How does a scientist separate his work from his beliefs?
I was born and brought up in this culture. I understood the presence of the river in our society, in our religion, and it is inborn or ingrained in my family too. We still know the science behind it. We exactly know how the pollution is happening. We know that it is one of the most polluted waters of the world, but still to us, it remains as the holy water which we can use for the entire time to come for the future.
Calcutta, like India, is growing at a stunning rate. The demand for water has drawn people into the street, where they pump it up from an underground aquifer.
He's pumping groundwater from a shallow aquifer, but we're underneath this massive city. Isn't there some pollution with this?
Yes, there should be some pollution into this, but more as we closer to the city, to the river Ganges in this case, about 3 to 4 kilometers, the contamination is much lower. So this is pretty much clear water right now. They're using the water for drinking purpose for all the hotels and restaurants nearby.
And the deep water must be coming from hundreds of kilometers away, up from the Himalayas and driven down really deep in the basin.
That's true.
Himalayan water providing for all of these people. The problem is that no one is really sure how much longer the tap from the Himalayas will remain open. The glaciers are melting, and presumably one day will be gone entirely. That would be catastrophic. Meanwhile, as the glaciers in Nepal melt faster, the Ganges carries more of the sediments downstream than the watershed can handle. As freighters head towards Calcutta, they churn up water turbid with Himalayan mud.
And it's increasing day by day. Year by year, we see that right now it's about 530 million tons of sediment throughout the Ganges River per year. And in my 25 years of growing up in the city myself, I have seen more and more population is encroaching and making the channel of the river smaller and smaller.
For centuries, Calcutta has been a gateway to the sea. But now the port is in jeopardy, clogged with sediments. The ships hit bottom, and in some parts, it's impossible to navigate at all. Meanwhile, out here, south of the city where the river meets the sea, life is spent on fishing boats hauling nets through the pull of the mud, or by farming on one of the myriad bars of silt that make up the fingers of the Ganges Delta, the world's largest river delta. The sediments in the delta coalesce as small islands and then grow as even more sediments gather. But the land they form is low-lying, and typhoons can come screaming in here and obliterate everything: the farms, the channels, the livestock, and the people. Through it all, that stream of sediment never stops. Some stays, but the bulk is carried out to sea. The sediments fan into the Bay of Bengal and are swept away south. You can see them. They look like wisps of sand. What was once seabed and then was once the tops of mountains is again at the bottom of the ocean. And as they arrive in Indonesia, the sediments reach the end of the production line. They are about to be fed into the fiery furnace of the collision zone. Yogyakarta is the cultural capital of Java, Indonesia. The downtown is built around a 400-year-old sultan's palace that was knocked down by a vicious earthquake in 2006. The earthquake, which registered 7.8 on the Richter scale, leveled much of the rest of the city. Almost 6,000 people died and 1.5 million were left homeless. Yogyakarta is in a precarious spot atop the meeting place of two violent tectonic plates. And it's not very far from Merapi, the volcano that created so much havoc in the fall of 2010. Merapi is fed by the tectonics beneath Indonesia. The Indo-Australian plate grinds against the Pacific plate along these Indonesian islands, Sumatra, Java, and Bali. That's why Indonesia looks like it does. Geologically, it's known as an island arc, the surface expression of subsurface machinery right along the fault line.
This is one of the most dangerous places in the world. This is a subduction zone which runs along the whole south coast of Indonesia. And the dangerous part is when the two plates are locked. Strain builds up, and then eventually the Asian plate finally releases all that energy and pops up over the Indian plate, and that produces a large earthquake. And of course, about 100 kilometers depth, the edge of that plate is melting, and that produces the volcanoes which lie just inland and form this spine along the whole of the Indonesian plate.
In 2004, more than 230,000 were killed by a tsunami that hit the west coast of Sumatra. In 2009, the Sumatran city of Padang was shaken by an earthquake that killed an estimated 1,300. In the fall of 2010, there were actually twin tragedies for Indonesians. First, a tsunami swamped some remote islands, killing hundreds. Then central Java was covered with ash. Merapi erupted with much more force than it has shown in a century.
The temperature around 700.
Christian Awi is a ranger who patrols the landscape around the base of Merapi and has seen every one of its many moods. He was here in 2006.
Merapi sometimes they call it good guy and bad guy. Good guy because bring good things like those boulders, stones, sands for buildings. Also for the soil, it's good. You can throw peanuts and it grow quickly. Yeah, but in the same time, destroy everything, like houses, people. Yeah.
When it's quiet, Merapi can yield everything from rocks for construction to grains harvested from the volcanic earth, which is super fertile and is the basis for some valuable agriculture. But when Merapi starts to thunder, all of the people who live around the giant volcano are evacuated. It's a cycle that repeats itself once every 5 years and makes for a very volatile place to live. The real dangers here are the pyroclastic flows, and they are intensely deadly. Pyroclastic flows are clouds of hot gas and rock that can whip down the side of a volcano at terrifying speeds, at temperatures of 1,000 degrees Celsius.
You've seen a lot of pyroclastic flows. If we were standing here when one came round that corner down the gorge, what would it look like?
I cannot think about it. I died immediately because the speed of the lava is about 100 kilometers per hour. We're only 3 kilometers away from up there. So what you said, no, I'm standing here, I cannot tell anything. Die. Yeah.
During the 2006 eruption, two journalists thought they were at a safe distance. They had no idea how fast the pyroclastic flow would pounce on top of them.
We got news that they're in the bunker and they die. And day after we come back here to look for them, but because it's too thick, the material, the pyroclast is too thick, and then we have some time, 2 days, digging, and we found them. Yeah. One guy was we found next to the gate over there, the doors. It was what do you call it? Burn, like a barbecue. And the other guy was in the bathroom and it was boiling, died. They both dead. Yeah. 2 days after the eruption, we found them. Yeah.
Merapi has done nasty things to a lot of people. In 1930, 1,400 died. In 1994, another 64 were killed. All is quiet on this day, though. Barely a burp on the seismograph. But on May 27, 2006, the seismograph looked like this. Merapi misbehaves often, so to keep tabs on things in the quiet times, the caretakers make a monthly trek to the summit. Just before sunrise, their headlights catch blooms of volcanic rock. Particulates swirl in the air with the sulfur gases.
This place here is the death zone of one of these subduction-related volcanoes, all because of the magma type which is pushing up underneath the volcano. It's very stiff, and most people have an image of volcanoes with red-hot lava running down the slope. It's not the case in this type of volcano, where this very stiff magma is pushed up from the magma chamber and forms this lava dome. And we've been spending the last couple of hours wandering around this lava dome, and it gets pushed up, and it eventually collapses. And one can safely predict that in the next few months, the next few years, the whole side of the mountain will give way and there will be an enormous pyroclastic flow.
The rising sun reveals the steaming dome of Merapi. There is no looking over the lip here to peer down into a crater. After Merapi explodes, the lava congeals and covers the volcano with a cap, a form-fitting lid.
And you can see cracks around here. We've already had 2 small earthquakes this morning. And the whole side of the lava dome will fairly soon collapse.
All the signs are here: the tremors, the steam, and the heat.
This area is cracking. This area is literally falling apart. And the cracks provide conduits for sulfur dioxide and other sulfur gases, and also a lot of water vapor to come up. So these are called fumaroles, which means smoky, and he's measuring the temperature of one of these fumaroles. These are scalding temperatures. These are just a little bit below boiling, so this is quite a dangerous area. And the rocks, too, are being rotted by gas moving up through them. So this area is completely disintegrating. By walking around, looking at what's happening to these slopes, taking temperatures, we're in for a big one. This is not a place where you want to hang around. It makes me nervous because I've seen these things in action, and they're extremely dangerous. But as a geologist, I'm absolutely fascinated by the opportunity to come here and look and see what happens before a pyroclastic flow takes off.
The pyroclastic flows burst forth from Merapi only a year after Nick visited the volcano's summit. hundreds of thousands of Javanese were forced to flee as Merope's devastation spread out farther and farther. In the grand tectonic sense, Merope is part of the same machine that began in the Himalayas. And one day, the end product will roll out on the tectonic assembly line, a whole new supercontinent. This is the debris that was left behind by Merope's 2006 eruption. There were a few unlucky homeowners who had to relocate. Tourists come up here now, while they can, to tramp up and down the paths next to the farmers laden with harvest from their volcanic fields. Some people buy flowers to make offerings to the goddess of Merope. But Merope is dangerous even after the eruptions calm down, because there is always the risk of lahars. A lahar is a massive mudslide rolling with the weight and consistency of concrete. When heavy rains soak the volcanic debris left behind by the pyroclastic flows, the whole mass is dislodged. Lahars have been clocked at over 100 kilometers an hour. The government has built some retaining walls here to try to control the flow for when a lahar happens again. Just another hazard of living along the Indo-Australian plate margin. All this debris is the final byproduct of the mechanism that raised the Himalayas, caused them to shed their sediments, and then carried those sediments all the way here to be shot out of a volcano.
Well, it's a grand cycle. You have plates colliding, huge mountains being thrown up. Those mountains are defying gravity. Gravity doesn't like mountains, it wants to pull them down. Huge amounts of sediments being released. They're flushed down into the oceans, and then they're recycled in subduction zones to form new land. So it's a great epic of mountain building, plate collisions, and sediments are the thread that connects that to the future chapters of new land and new supercontinents.
And that's the point. Why all of this huge tectonic activity continues. It's all about building the plates, building the land, and ultimately constructing a new supercontinent.
Supercontinents form with a frequency of about 400 million years. The last supercontinent broke up about 200 million years ago to form the modern oceans, and slowly those modern oceans are being consumed. The ocean crust is being lost down subduction zones, and we're just starting to get into the next phase of building another supercontinent. And we can predict the position of future continents with a lot more accuracy than we can next week's weather. So as a geologist, if we look into the future, we can say with accuracy that in 200 million years' time there will be another supercontinent, and it will be centered around Indonesia.
And then the process will start again. But that is 200 million years away, and for many of us, that amount of change in that vast time frame is unimaginable. But change, at least in the short term, is familiar to the people who live here. Just come visit and stay a while. Before long, you'll feel the Earth move too.